I'm the book guy, and today we're talking about the three-body problem and the full trilogy, Remembrance of Earth's Past, by the author Lou Cixin. Now, this series surged in popularity back in the 2010s. Everyone was reading this book for a while, even Barack Obama. Last year, the new Netflix TV series by the creators of Game of Thrones brought the three-body problem back to the forefront of the public consciousness. So maybe you've been hearing about this series for years, or maybe you've watched the show and now you're wondering, are the books worth reading? Well, I read a lot of books, and let me tell you, it's been a while since a series has captivated me this much. I read this trilogy in a frenzy. I had to go watch the show and then dive into forums and theories and read up on all the science used in the books to try to understand it better. What's the real science? What's the theoretical science? Whew. I had to know everything. I got hooked hard. But the series is also pretty niche. This is a hard science story, meaning it only uses real science or theoretically possible science, and there's a lot of time spent dedicated to explaining all the complexities with as much accuracy as possible. And the story can sometimes be nihilistic, focusing on the struggle to find hope in the overwhelming vastness of the cosmos. So it's not quite a mainstream happy Star Wars type science fiction. Yet this story changed me. Like, it's no exaggeration to say that. It changed my perspective on life, humanity, and the universe, everything. And it was a positive change, mostly. So today, I'm going to pitch these books to you, spoiler-free and as objectively as possible. My goal is to help you decide if the books are going to be right for you. Plus, we'll also compare it to the TV show to help existing fans know what to expect from the books. Let's begin. During China's Cultural Revolution, a secret military base has been searching for alien life. They send signals out into space with messages of peace and friendship. Unfortunately, their sentiments are not returned. They find a desperate alien race on a dying world who plan to conquer our world to save themselves. Humanity is divided between those who wish to welcome our new alien overlords and those who wish to fight back. But these aliens have technology that is so far beyond what humanity is capable of. So all of Earth must unite like never before. Our top minds must work together to develop our science faster than ever if we are to survive. This trilogy is part of a special subgenre known as hard science fiction. This genre focuses on only using science that is accurate and logical, either a proven fact or a possible theory. So it's less like Star Wars, where they do a lot of cool stuff with vague technical language to justify it.
Depend on some spooky mumbo jumbo?
Instead, this is more like The Martian, with real scientific ideas explored with as much accuracy as possible. Also, I know some Star Wars fan is about to be like, actually, Star Wars is very... No, stop it. Star Wars has hard world building, it does not have hard science. Okay, just calm down. Anyway, hard science fiction is actually an incredibly rare genre. There are very few stories that go to this much effort to get the science just right. A few examples of this would be Foundation, The Martian, or The Expanse to some extent. Even a few films like Interstellar, Arrival, and Her are all examples of hard science fiction. These are stories that are shaped by the science, rather than reshaping the science to fit the story. Most of the time. I think this genre is rare because it requires a very unique type of person to actually write it. Someone with
a very particular set of skills.
There are so few people with extensive scientific knowledge who can also write a good book that forms emotional connection to characters and tells a thrilling plot line. It's hard to write a story like this with hard science fiction without getting bogged down in the scientific specifics. The real question is, how does a writer balance theatricality with realism? It's a very narrow tightrope to walk. But that's what I loved about this series. It walks that tightrope possibly better than anything I've ever seen. I mean, to be clear, it still leans very hard to the side of scientific realism, but I still found the books thrilling, tense, and emotional at the same time. So this is essentially a story of humanity fighting aliens.
Welcome to Earth.
But every other time we see this type of story, it's all shooting lasers, bombs, explosions, etc. And the main characters in these types of stories are the world leaders, the pilots, the soldiers. But in this series, our main characters are the scientists. The nerds. Our protagonists are the great thinkers who have to constantly innovate, create new scientific solutions to their astronomically large problems. And it's quite brilliant. For one, I just love this depiction of a world where scientists are the heroes that society idolizes. You know, instead of sports stars, actors, loudmouth cult figures. I mean, could you imagine a world where we looked up to the experts instead of ignoring them entirely? In this story, the battlefield is not fought on traditional battlefields. It's fought in labs, where engineers and thinkers put together ambitious plans and theorize on what might be possible if we put all of our resources towards it. The story is all about the technological advancement of our species versus the advancement of our enemy. But what actual science are we talking about here? Well, we spend a lot of time discussing the mathematics of space travel, things like the speed of light, gravitational pulls, and other complex physics. Plus, the book explores a lot of scientific ideas that don't exist yet, but have been theorized to be possible in the near future. Things like quantum entanglement, interstellar travel, antimatter devices, and just plain old bigger guns. One brilliant side of this is how the humans have to use science that's possible in our near future, while the aliens have bigger, bolder science that's much, much further out of our reach. So there's a clever blurring of lines between what's possible and what might actually be pure science fiction. Plus, these concepts get really big. Over the course of 3 books, the scope and scale of these scientific concepts absolutely blew me away, and it happened so many times. The books would introduce a concept and I'd think, wow, that's about the biggest thing I can imagine, and then the story would just go bigger, again, over and over. Naturally, I'm not going to give any examples because that's all spoiler territory, but it was a joy to read this series and have my mind just challenged to think bigger. This was an experiment in creativity, and it was humbling to feel so small in the scale of the universe, and empowering to think of the potential that humanity might have, the wonders that we might achieve. This was possibly the most ambitious series I've ever read. That said, as cool as all these concepts might be, there are some other storytelling areas that are neglected. Before I started reading Three Body Problem, heaps of people warned me that there's no character and no story at all, it's just hard science. And yeah, I've seen the series criticized for that very reason many times since, but when I read it for myself, I did not find that to be the case. I thought that side of it was greatly exaggerated. It was nowhere near as bad as people made it out to be. The characters are well written, however, they are definitely not the priority of the story. To simplify it, they're not terrible, they're not perfect, they're just good. Essentially, the characters in this trilogy are primarily there to be viewpoints for the conflict. They are mouthpieces to explain the hard science concepts to the reader, and they each represent aspects of humanity to be explored. After all, this story is a rich commentary on the human race. It's speaking about all of us and our place in the universe. You see, all good science fiction is not just speculation on the future of the universe, it's about the future of humanity, and it has something to say about us. In many ways, the real protagonist is humanity itself. I know it's such a cheesy thing to say, but it's true. How would the world react to this crisis situation? What would our leaders do? How would society change? How would the best of humanity show itself compared to the worst of humanity? Yes, maybe the real character writing was inside of us all along. Anyway, each of these 3 books introduces a whole new cast of characters with very little overlap between books. So I think changing main character for every book is a big part of the reason why it doesn't feel like the characters are a big deal in the series. Let me give you a rundown. The main character of book 1 is Wang Miao, a nanoscientist who works with nanotechnology. Also, just note, I'm going to butcher all the Chinese names. I'm sorry in advance. Now, Wang is leading new scientific breakthroughs in his field, which naturally makes him an enemy to all of the aliens. He's our point of view character in book 1 who discovers the alien threat and what they are and what they want. Now, Wang is very much a blank slate character. He's just a point of view for us just to piggyback on. Book 1 is short, and it's got a lot of new concepts to set up, so character is very much pushed to the side. Also, Wang is just dropped from the later books as we introduce new protagonists, so I think most of the reputation for bad character writing comes from this one guy.
This is all your fault!
But his role in the story is a depiction of how humanity will react in a crisis. The psychological strain he feels, the feelings of helplessness, but ultimately that desire to fight back. That's what Wang represents in all of us. In book 2, we meet the protagonist Luo Ji, an astronomer and sociologist. Now, this guy has a huge amount of character development at the start of book 2, almost as if the author was responding to criticisms on character writing. Now, Luo Ji considers leaving science behind, falling in love, and writing a novel instead, but ultimately Luo Ji struggles with creativity. You see, the name itself, Luo Ji, is a play on words. Luo Ji is the Chinese word for logic. And of course, in Chinese, the family name is said first, so his name is pronounced Ji Luo. So the play on words is a little bit more subtle in the original text. His name just isn't translated into English, but if it was, it might be logic, you know? It just wouldn't work as well. But that's the point of his character. Luo Ji represents the logical aspect of humanity. Logical even to the point of ruthlessness. Sure, he understands the beauty of human nature, but he understands its darkness too. He's a much more emotionless character. In book 3, our final protagonist is Cixin, and she is an aerospace engineer. And in the same way, Cixin is similar to the Chinese word changyi, that means loosely sincerity. So where Luo Ji is logic, Cixin is heart or emotion. So she believes in the best of humanity and is filled with hope and optimism, but we clearly see the dangers of idealism explored very clearly through her character. Now I should warn you, if you're new to the three-body fandom, Cixin is one of the most hated characters I've ever seen. In preparing this video, I read through several massive threads of people just listing at length the reasons why they hate her in great detail. Personally, I had no problem with her. I mean, it felt a lot like when I watched Breaking Bad, and I had no problem with the lead woman Skylar, but then I found out afterwards that a whole bunch of men hated her more than any other character in the story. And that included the literal Nazis. Just saying, the parallels here are insane. Although to be clear, by all means, hate the character. I don't care. If that's your interpretation of the story, then that's valid. But I just want to point out that many readers miss the point of her character. All of her emotional decisions are well intended, and that's the point. This is a commentary on optimism and sincerity in the face of a ruthless universe. Now, some people might naturally ask, why is the male protagonist logical and the female protagonist emotional? Is that kind of offensive?
That's really offensive.
Well, it turns out the author, Cixin Lou, originally wrote all of his protagonists to be men, but it was his publisher who insisted he turn the final protagonist into a woman to appeal to more readers. And personally, I almost wish that he had left Cixin as a man, just because it's led to more people misunderstanding the theme. So many readers seem to think that Cixin's emotional nature is just, well, women being women, and not a fundamental aspect of humanity that's present in all of us. Still, I hope you can appreciate that there's a lot of thought put into the characterization across the trilogy. It's definitely a secondary goal to the story, but it's present the whole way through. And if you read it, you can then go online and discuss characterization at length with everyone else, including how much you hate them.
Hate. Double hate.
Now, what is the actual story about? Alright, keeping this strictly spoiler-free, why does this story take 3 whole books, each bigger than the last? Well, let me highlight 4 types of plot lines you'll see in the series, and this will help you decide if you want to read all 3 books. First plotline, Discovery. This is the mystery plotline that starts off the series, trying to piece together all the clues and figure out what's going on. Scientists are killing themselves, physics itself seems to be broken, meanwhile people start playing a hyper-realistic virtual reality game called The Three-Body Problem.
That's the name of the thing!
While most of book 1 is focused on this mystery plotline, there is always an element of mystery throughout the whole series going forward. There are always more secrets, more unknowable things in the universe waiting to be discovered. Second plotline, we have resistance. So specifically, the Wall Facer program is what kicks this off. With the super advanced aliens on their way, humanity picks 4 super geniuses to each come up with their own secret plan to save humanity, all of whom have unlimited money and resources to do it, no questions asked. Where the other 3 Wall Facers are all geniuses in different scientific fields, our hero, Luigi, is unique because of his field of sociology. If anyone can understand the alien's mind, maybe it's him. The Resistance plotline is all about strategizing with huge, ambitious scientific plans that push the boundaries of what's possible. Yet the inevitable question is, how ethical can you truly be in the pursuit of saving humanity? Again, this plotline continues in various forms all throughout the whole trilogy. It's human nature to keep fighting back, no matter the odds. The third type of plotline is we have the war. Now, to be clear, where Resistance is all about coming up with plans, the war plotlines are all about their execution. Now, when I realized that this story was all about humanity versus aliens, I thought, oh geez, we're going to be sitting around for 3 whole books waiting for hundreds of years until the enemy shows up at the very end of book 3. Ha! Boy, was I wrong. There is a constant back and forth throughout this story. Changes in the status quo, surprise twists and turns. Like seriously, every time I thought that this war couldn't get more epic, it just got more epic. This plotline was even more impressive when you consider how much hard science goes into it. So aliens don't one-up humans or vice versa because of just Deus Ex Machina. There is real scientific theory being employed here, one countering the other. And I must stress, this really is a battle of the mind between our scientists and theirs, and that's what makes it so satisfying because of how smart it is. The final plotline is the jumps in time. Now, this story takes place over a huge amount of time. Every jump forward sees a dramatic shift in humanity's position. We see history evolve, we see technology and the world evolve and explore how everything has changed. This is perhaps the plotline that has the most fiction out of all this science fiction. It's pure speculation on how society would change under various crises. But I can't say much more about it other than this was probably my favorite plotline. As you've probably guessed by now, this trilogy is not just hard science and an entertaining story, it's also full of rich, deep themes about humanity, life, and the universe itself. So one of the big themes I'll touch on is nihilism, at least nihilism on the surface. So we realize how small and powerless we are in the face of super civilizations and the uncaring cosmos. As humanity faces potential destruction, we see a lot of people just give up. And yet, the story is really about staring down and facing the temptation of nihilism and ultimately finding hope anyway. You might even say it's about the perseverance of the human spirit. If you think about it, we all kind of know that death is inevitable and that the world will end eventually, so there is a certain melancholy despair that comes with that type of knowledge. Yet we all learn to live with it anyway. So while the books discuss nihilism, it ultimately offers an optimistic outlook on how to overcome it. Another major theme is humanity's struggle to unify. Even in the face of a threat to our entire species, there are humans who still turn on each other. This series can often be uncomfortable and unflattering in how it depicts us, sort of like that old question posed in Frankenstein, who is the real monster? This can best be summarized by the author himself. At the end of the first book, there's a little note from the author that briefly explains his belief on unity. Let me just read it in full. There's a strange contradiction revealed by the naivety and kindness demonstrated by humanity when faced with the universe. On Earth, humankind can step onto another continent and without a thought destroy the kindred civilizations found there through warfare and disease. But when they gaze up at the stars, they turn sentimental and believe that if extraterrestrial intelligence exists, they must be civilizations bound by universal, noble, moral constraints, as if cherishing and loving different forms of life are part of a self-evident universal code of conduct. I think it should be precisely the opposite. Let's turn the kindness we show towards the stars to members of the human race on Earth, and build up trust and understanding between the different peoples and civilizations that make up humanity. But for the universe outside the solar system, we should be ever vigilant and be ready to attribute the worst of intentions to any others that might exist in space. For a fragile civilization like ours, this is without a doubt the most responsible path. I believe these books are a fascinating case study in why the people of Earth should work together. By creating a common enemy in this thought experiment, the books show the incredible achievements we could unlock by the power of friendship. The final theme I'll touch on is that theme explored by our, hated character Cixin. Because like I said, a lot of people miss the point of her. She has a very high moral standard. She has principles that she will not compromise on. Yet the book explores the idea that perhaps people who refuse to ever compromise on their beliefs are not actually good people. That they would rather sacrifice people than sacrifice their own conscience. Perhaps there is some selfishness there. It's a fascinating ethical thought experiment, suggesting that we may have noble humanitarian goals, but we still need to be realistic, smart, and practical in how we work to achieve them. It's something people don't always want to talk about, but it's something still worth discussing. Okay, let's move on to the TV show. There have been multiple films, short films, and TV shows adapting this series over the last 20 years, most of them made in China. And if you're watching this video in, English YouTube, you're probably thinking of the 2024 Netflix show made by D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, the creators of Game of Thrones. So is that show faithful and accurate? Is it still worth reading the books if you've already watched the show? Well, personally, I found the show really impressive. I would have thought that this was almost unfilmable, but they've done a good job of converting these high concept ideas to the screen. That said, there are still 3 big differences that I want to highlight today, because these 3 big differences will explain why I still think it's worth reading the books even if you've already watched the show. The first big difference is characters. So you know how each book has a different cast of characters and a different main protagonist? Well, in the show, all of the characters across all 3 books are simply present right away. All of them already know each other as a group of former students from Oxford University. This significant change was done to put more emphasis on characterization and give them all a chance to interact more and show their relationships develop. However, the author Cixin had an issue with this. He said the whole point of the story is that it's aliens versus humanity, but by putting all of the heroes in one place, it changes the story to be more like aliens versus this one singular group of people. Of course, the show creators did try to compromise on this by diversifying the group. They may all be former Oxford students living in England, but they're all from Asian, Middle Eastern, African, and European descent. So there's still an element of them representing all of humanity, even if it's not quite the same thing as the book. And as a side note, they've actually changed a lot of the names for the show. So Wang Miao is now Augie Salazar, and Lua Ji is Saul Durand. And Cixin is now Cixin is now Cixin Jin. Stupid native English speaker. So I do think this was a good choice overall. The major criticisms against the book is that there's weaker characterization, and I think the change in the show allows for a lot more character development and for the audience to form more attachment. But just know that there is a trade-off to that. Part of the global scale of the story is lost in that exchange. The second big difference in the show is that plot lines from all 3 books have sort of merged together. So season 1 is not just book 1. In fact, it includes parts of book 2 and even book 3. So there's a lot more overlap, as all the different story threads happen at once, rather than one thread at a time like in the books. This also leads to some significant restructuring of the story, so the story is reshaped to have a big climax at the end of every episode. But this has led to some criticisms of the show, saying that the story feels rushed, that the show skips a lot of the slower moments and just sticks to all the big cool stuff. And while I appreciate the need for dramatics and keeping the audience's attention, it does kind of make the story feel a bit too quick. The third and final big difference in the show is that it simply skims over all of the science. This is by far the biggest difference. Every time the book introduces a big scientific concept, it explains the science behind it at length. There's a staggering amount of research that goes into making it as authentic as possible. Plus, it's communicated in very simple, effective language, so it's surprisingly comprehensible. But the show almost never explains the science. They simply show the cool thing, then explain the final result of what it achieves without explaining any of the method. This means there are whole internet threads of fans of the show asking, how the hell does this thing even work? And all these people responding with,
It makes sense if you've read the books.
Personally, I would have liked if the show had made just a little bit more effort to explain the science, even just a little. Like, instead of going from one extreme of the book, possibly over-explaining everything, to then explaining nothing, I think that was too sharp of a contrast, especially for such a hard science book series. So those are the three big differences in the TV show. Obviously there are others, but I think that's just the big stuff. Still, I should absolutely mention how gorgeous these special effects are. They're freaking amazing. And they've kept all the important story beats so far. The creators do anticipate that there'll be either 3 or 4 seasons in total, and I'll absolutely be watching them all. After all of the books have been written, so the show creators won't run out of content to adapt halfway through. Now, there's one other outside source we need to discuss here. Okay, technically this trilogy has a 4th book. It's called The Redemption of Time, and it's by a different author, Bao Shu. Actually, I'm not sure how to say that one. I forgot to look it up. I don't care. It's extremely debatable as to whether or not the 4th book is canon. The context is that this series was just hugely popular in China upon its first release, and when it ended its publication, thousands of people took to writing fan fictions online about what might happen next. The largest and most popular of these pieces was by Bao Shu, who wrote nearly 300 pages in 3 weeks.
I'm not a normal humans. I am a god.
All with the aim to continue the story. The original publishers decided to publish it, and Cixin Lou gave his blessing. But here's the thing. The book itself is wildly different to the established trilogy. Many people think it was just a cash grab by the publishers, and Cixin Lou has been diplomatically quiet about what he really thinks about it, so the legitimacy of the 4th book is widely questioned. Personally, I haven't read the 4th book, but I read a summary of it to get an idea, and I thought, yeah, no, that's a little bit too crazy for me. I mean, it starts bringing in the concepts of reincarnation, which isn't that scientific, but other critics have praised the 4th book for introducing high-concept science fiction, just like the same thing in the 3-body problem. There is also the suggestion that it blurs the lines between science and spiritualism, and that's the new development angle. So I just want to flag the existence of the 4th book for you and just let you decide if you want to try it too. It's no exaggeration at all to say that this is a very Chinese story. Most of the main characters are Chinese, similar to how many American films tend to cast almost exclusively Americans. Yet there's deliberate effort through the pages to make this feel like a global story that reflects all of humanity. That's why we have characters from America, England, and Latin America, and other European places. There's several indigenous characters, such as an Aborigine from Australia and a Maori from New Zealand. The point is that this series is meant to depict all of humanity. So there's also constant discussions around how governments and societies all over the world are reacting to the crisis. So it has a global scale. The depiction of women, though, does have some debate. So there are 2 women in the series who make emotional decisions. This has led to a slew of people accusing the books of demonizing women and emotions, claiming that the author believes that neither of them can be trusted. All that men and women represent yin and yang in very traditional gender roles. But that has also led to a slew of people defending the depictions of women in the series. It's a matter of some public debate. And of course, I'm just flagging this with you. You can decide for yourself what you think. The story definitely has more men than women in it, and women are stereotypically depicted as softer characters. But there is also a consistent female presence all the way through the trilogy, and they are shown to be competent. Now, there isn't much of an LGBT presence in the series, since that's the kind of thing that the Chinese government will censor, yet there is a small, subtle scene where a character hibernates and wakes up in the future, and now notices that homosexuality is widely accepted. The character simply thinks, wow, this is different from my era, and that's it. It's short, but honestly, I think it's a pretty big deal for a Chinese author to get that type of affirmation in their book to begin with. As for a content warning, this is a pretty mature series. Now, it doesn't rely a lot on graphic violence and gore, although there are a few rare instances of it. There's talk around how humanity reacts to a crisis, such as violent crime and even cannibalism.
Frowned upon in most societies.
Yet I believe all of it occurs off-screen. Instead, the content warning here is all about the bleakness of trying to survive in a cruel universe. It's all the nihilism, questions of the meaning and purpose of life, and the inevitability of death. There are lots of discussions around suicide. I won't lie, by the time I got to the end of this series, I felt the cold dread of despair.
In the pit of despair.
The goal of the series is ultimately hopeful, yet it humbled me in a way that could be painful to experience at times. Still, I'm flagging this as a content warning for you because this is a common source of depression. A popular psychological theory is that there are 4 types of depression, one of which is existential depression. And I won't go into it, but there are heavy themes in this series that could absolutely cause a little bit of mental health challenges. Alright, is the ending worth it? So, this is $1 million question. No spoilers, of course, but this is one of the most powerful endings I've ever experienced. I will think about the ending of the series for the rest of my life. It is unforgettable. Yet, I don't think it's a crowd-pleasing ending. There has been some backlash from people saying they didn't like the ending, hence those thousands of fan fiction pieces that came out after the final book. So I can't promise that you will enjoy the ending, but I can promise that it's unique, it's ambitious, and it will leave you thinking about these books long after you put it down. So how much should you try? Well, look, that's a tough question because I don't think the series goes through any shift up and down in its quality. I think it's consistently good at the same level, so you can try book 1 and know right away if it's right for you. Just know that most people consider the second book, The Dark Forest, to be their favorite, myself included. And from book 2 onwards is where we start getting better character work. So that's all. Now ultimately, I still feel like I've barely communicated how good this series is. I can't talk about all the hard science and the cool plot twists without spoilers, so I feel like I'm leaving out all the best bits, but still, I hope I've convinced more of you to try this epic series and really push the boundaries of your imagination in bold new directions. So good luck and happy reading. Thanks for watching, guys. I would love it if you would consider reading my own books, The Immortal Investigations, an urban fantasy with monsters, magic, and mystery. I also have an online shop with a bunch of cool t-shirts, book bags, and book pins. And I have my Patreon, where you can vote on my content. After all, my patrons voted on this series for the next video, so any of those 3 options will really help out my channel. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe for more really in-depth book reviews like this one. Tell me below what you thought of the 3-body problem and if you want to read it now. Otherwise, I will see you again very soon. I hope you enjoy a good book today. Bye!